According to senior US military officials, Russian missiles have landed inside Poland and 2 individuals have reportedly died as a result. Now, CNN reports that the 2 individuals who were killed were farmers in a rural part of Poland. And since Poland is a NATO member, there is some possibility that pending an investigation, allied nations could invoke what's referred to as Article 5. I'll give you details on what that means in just a moment, but a lot is unknown about this, including lack of confirmation that these were in fact Russian missiles. Russia has denied that it's their missiles. In fact, they claim that blaming Russia for this attack is a provocation. Although, I mean, who else would do this? It's certainly not Ukraine, right? And so the real question at this point is whether or not this was an accident by Russia or if it was an intentional attack in Poland. Now, here's what we know for sure so far. Russia is in fact currently bombarding Ukraine with a massive salvo of missile strikes. Polish media were first to report on a huge blast by the Ukrainian border. Let me give you the details on that. Polish media showed an image of a deep impact and upturned farm vehicle at the site near the town of Privozodo, around 4 miles west of the Ukrainian border. A Polish official told CNN that nothing was confirmed yet and the investigation into the incident was continuing. What I'm happy to see, especially from the United States, and there has already been a State Department briefing on this, is that they're very careful and calculated, measured in the way that they're responding to this. They make it clear that a lot has not been confirmed yet, and they need to know what the intentions were here, whether it was an accident or if this was an intentional attack in Poland or on Poland. The Associated Press later cited 2 anonymous US military officials who said that the blast was caused by a Russian missile or missiles. However, other US officials have been more hesitant to assign responsibility. When asked about the reported strikes, US officials were cautious. Pentagon Press Secretary Brigadier General Patrick Ryder told reporters that the Defense Department could not immediately corroborate the information coming out of Poland. So I'm sure this story is going to develop even further. Cenk, I do have more details, but what are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, first thing is bring it down, bring it all the way down. So you know that we've been very critical of Russia here and said that they need to be matched in their aggression, not going beyond that, but that we need to protect Ukraine. Otherwise, they're going to expand into more territories, create more hostility, and create bigger wars. And that's why we want to make sure the Russians were checked. Now, having said that, rushing into an Article 5 war against Russia is nuts. So it's just one missile. Now, if it turns out it's an accident or mistake, as Anna's been saying, that's a completely different scenario than if it was intended. And you'll know if it was intended. How will you know? Based on evidence of this missile? No, not likely. No, you'll know if there's a second missile and a fourth missile and an eighth missile, right? So there is a number, I don't know what the number is, third or fourth missile, when it becomes clear that it is intended, then we're in a completely different ball game. And that ball game is very dangerous and very problematic and has no easy answers, okay? But right now we're not in that ball game. We're just in a stray missile. Let's all bring it down and try to resolve it as calmly and diplomatically as we can.
Yeah, the worst thing that could happen is if this turns into a game of chicken, right? And I like the thing with Putin, and again, I want to be clear, nothing has been confirmed yet. I'm just saying worst case scenario, this is what would happen. Putin is unpredictable and he is not a rational actor. And he does incredibly erratic things that causes backlash toward him by his own people, that's for sure. And so right now, considering the fact that Russia is losing this war, Russian troops have lost Kherson, and every time Putin begins to lose or the troops begin retreating, he starts doing even more irrational things, right?
Yeah, except I'm going to put a huge asterisk on that because it depends on your point of view on irrational. If your point of view is the rest of the planet and not getting into a nuclear war, yes, it's deeply irrational. But there is an actual reason why he's doing it, because his control internally within Russia is starting to get questioned and starting to fray. So now he's got Russian TV pundits all over the air questioning how they lost the last city that Anna referred to, right? So with those internal enemies closing in, the best way to solidify them is unfortunately a bigger conflict which forces everyone in Russia to circle the wagons. So it's a trick as old as time and a very dangerous one. So if Putin only cares about his own well-being and he feels endangered by domestic politics because of his failure in this war, he could look to ironically expand it rather than contract it in order to fend off his internal opponents. And that is where we get into significant danger for all of us.
Now, from what I'm seeing in terms of the response from Polish officials is a very careful response to this, right? And they're calling for more investigations, which obviously should happen. Polish media reported that the explosions may have been caused by the remains of a Russian missile intercepted by Ukrainian armed forces, a much different calculus for NATO than intentional Russian strikes. And yeah, I think intention absolutely does matter. If it was an accident, the idea of invoking Article 5 would be insane. And what is Article 5? Well, a deliberate attack on a NATO member could, in theory, lead to the invocation of the alliance's Article 5, which states that an attack on one member of the military alliance is considered an attack against all. But the NATO treaty is highly unlikely to be triggered by an accidental attack. So that's why this investigation is so important, to kind of figure out what's going on here.
Yeah, nearby countries in Eastern Europe like Estonia are all tweeting about, we defend every inch of NATO. Now, the reason they're saying that is not because they care deeply about their Polish allies, and I'm sure they do. But the main reason they're saying it is, remember, don't abandon us. Russia's most likely to take Estonia next if you allow them to continue to encroach upon Eastern European territories that are not their own. So that's why Poland would be a gigantic test if that's what Putin intends. One last thing. Look, the longer you wait and the longer you do diplomacy, the longer internal opponents of Putin have to take care of things within Russia, right? So you might catch a lucky break there. So do not start any conflict that you can't roll back and bide your time. There does come a time, but that means you've already taken a disastrous turn. So try to stay away from that disastrous turn for as long as humanly possible. That would be my advice for what it's worth to the US and allies.
Well, we'll stay on the story and update you guys as we learn more. For now, though, let's go back to some domestic politics with a pretty big update that broke after the show yesterday.